Hi, this is Dr. A. I'm going to show you a little bit about deploying something from Visual Studio to a Linux machine. I'm doing this in a kind of a simple way, so it's not really integrated into any kind of deployment process. But I wanted to show you, most of you have this, and I created this web application on a Linux server to start with, and I went ahead and copied it over to my Windows server so I could work on it. So there's really nothing to this. Just clean up a little bit. I wanted to point out a couple of things here. I have a .use URLs, and I have put https://*:5001. Now, I did that because I want it to run on every possible IP that could be on the machine. So I just put star in there like that. And it runs, and it's very simple. It doesn't really do much. So if I just run it here, you'll see that it's pretty much a default application. And I pull it up over here, and it comes up. Now, for the first time it came up, it asked me to confirm the certificate thing because this is running on localhost without a certificate. So there it is. And I can actually deploy this now. So I'm actually going to deploy this to a folder, not to an app service or an app service Linux. So this would be, an Azure app service or an Azure app service on Linux or an Azure virtual machine. Instead, I'm just going to do like a file system, and we'll publish it to a folder. And I could have published it to a SCP or something like that, I suppose. But I'm going to do it this way first. And it's going to send me over here to this. And it's going to publish it. Our target location is bin release.net core app 2.1 publish. Okay, so if I want to see exactly where that's going to be, I can look here. And so once I have that, I just need to go over and find it. So here's my Razor pages, and we're bin release.net core, and here is all of this information, and then here is the publish. So this is where I would expect to actually publish things. And if I want to, I can actually drag and drop this over onto my Linux machine and run it, and it should run just fine there because I got it from there. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab this publish directory here, drag it over and drop it on here, and it'll take a few seconds to do that. Alright, so it's done now, and I should be able to go over here, and in this look I have a new directory called publish, and if I go in here and look at this, there is going to be a Razor Pages movie.dll file. That's this one right here that you can see, and that's the one that I want to run. So that's the name of my project. So I just say .net Razor pages.dll, and I'm going to go ahead and put ampersand so that I can actually see it run in the background, and I get a now listening, etc. And I should be able to go over to my file, my system over here. And sorry, it came up before I had a chance to drag it over, but I can go back and look and see the different pages and whatnot that are here. So there's a way that I am now developing something on my Windows machine and able to deploy it in a very simple way to my Linux machine. Now, that's probably not what I really want to do. I really want it to run behind the Apache web server that I'm going to set up. So let's kill. I did set this to be running, so I can just say kill %1 and it'll shut down the application. And there it's done. So where do we go from here? Well, the next place that we're going to go is actually to configure all of the information we need to put this behind the Linux Apache running on Linux. So at this point, I'm going to go back and look at everything that I have going on here. Now, right now I'm on the host on Linux with Apache. This is ASP.NET Core 2.1, which I have given you a link to. And let's just go through the configuring a reverse proxy. So this is a common setup for serving dynamic web pages, and the reverse proxy is going to terminate the HTTP request and then forward it on to the ASP.NET app. The proxy server is one which forwards the client request to another server instead of fulfilling the request itself, and a reverse proxy forwards to a fixed destination, typically on behalf of arbitrary clients. In this guide, so Apache is going to be configured as the reverse proxy running on the same server that Kestrel is serving the ASP.NET Core application. So because requests are forwarded by reverse proxy, we have to use the forwarded headers middleware from the ASP.NET Core HTTP overrides package. And the middleware updates the request scheme and uses the X forwarded protocol header so that redirected URIs and other security policies work correctly. So since we're sort of passing this on. Any component that depends on the scheme, such as authentication, link generation, redirects, and geolocation, have got to be placed after invoking our forwarded headers middleware. As a general rule, forwarded headers middleware should run before other middleware except diagnostics and error handling middleware. So this ordering ensures that the middleware relying on forwarded headers information can consume the header values for processing. So I'm expecting this to be somewhere near the top of my code. So we're going to invoke the use forwarded headers method in the startup.config in the method in startup.config before calling use authentication or similar authentication scheme middleware. So configure the middleware to forward X forwarded for and X forwarded proto headers like we see below. So to do that, I need to go figure out where in this Melange configure our startup.configure. So here we've got our startup.cs, that's our class. Here's .configure, this is the method we're going to call. And we have, in this particular case, I'm going to put it at the top. So, well, now this is error handling right here, so we probably need to put it below that. So let's put that below the error handling, because it did say to put it below the error handling. And did they say to do it before any redirection or anything else? So it clearly belongs here. And I'm going to say app.use forwarded headers. And I'm going to say new forwarded header options. Okay, and we'll put in there forwarded headers is equal to forwarded headers headers dot X forward for or. Okay, so before we go any further, let's go ahead and fix this. So this says use the Microsoft.asp.net.http overrides. Well, they told us that was going to be needed, so let's go ahead and add it in there. All right, now we can say or forwarded headers dot X forwarded X forwarded proto. Okay, and then we've got our use HTTPS redirection, use da 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 da. Okay, so we've got that put in there. Let's see where we go next. So I've got that, right? That's what I just put in there. If no forwarded headers options are specified in the middleware, the default header to forward are none. Only proxies running on localhost are trusted by default. If other trusted proxies or networks within the organization handle requests between the internet and the web server, add them to the list of known proxies or known networks with forwarded header options. The following example adds a trusted proxy server at IP address 10.0.0.100 to forward headers middleware known proxies in the startup. So, you know, I have a sneaking suspicion I'm going to need to do that. So let me go ahead and do that here. I'm just going to comment this out, added by Dr. A, so that later on I know what I changed and what I didn't. And added by Dr. A. And we're going to do services.configure. This is in, the startup is going to be in startup.configure services, so it needs to be in here. It doesn't say where I need to put it in there, though. It just says that it has to be in there somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and add it to the end. Hopefully that isn't a problem. Added by Dr. A. And added by Dr. A. And let's go ahead and put this in here. So we're going to say services dot configure. And this time we're going to put the forwarded headers options. Okay. And I'm going to open this up and we're going to say, given some options, let's create ourselves a lambda expression here. And that's going to be options dot option. Well, let's make them the same. Options dot known proxies dot add. And I need to figure out what my IP address is. Now, I am running a Google thing here, so I can do an ifconfig and see that I'm running on 10.10.142.2. Now that's what my internal address is actually running. So let's go ahead and add that in there. All right. Class, oh, add IP address dot parse. There we go. IP address it doesn't know about, but we can fix that. Let's go using system.net. There we go. So this is what's running on my local server. It's not it is known to the outside world, but it's not exactly accessible. Okay. By the way, Control-KD will reformat my code because I'm too lazy to hit tab. So that's all we need to configure in .NET. So let's move on to actually configuring Apache. The first thing that I want to point out is that I have up and running CPTR 446G. That's for google.cs.southern.edu. And I have this up and running already. Now there are some videos that I've done already that show you how to get this up and running and to install. In fact, it's very simple to install a Let's Encrypt certificate here. And so you can see that indeed I actually have a secure connection with Let's Encrypt. So I'm good. No problems there. So let's look at how to do this. Okay, we've downloaded and installed this, and we've configured Apache, but we do need to configure it with a new virtual host scheme. And so I have to configure, the configuration files for Apache are located in my etc. http://httpd, which is not the same for me because I am on Ubuntu. So I will have to look at mine in etc/Apache2. And any file with a .conf extension is processed in alphabetical order in addition to the module configuration files in the conf.modules.d, which contains any configuration files necessary to load the modules. So we're going to create a configuration file called helloapp.conf for the app. And let's do that in sites of in my system. I need to be in sites available. So I'm going to actually see if I can do this a little bit easier. Here we go. This is where we are configuring files for this. So I'm going to go into sites -available. Now I want to see something to see. No, there are no jobs running. Good. So you'll notice that there is a 00.-default conf, and let's look at these before we jump in and start doing some new things. There's a .old there, so that one will not get processed. So let's look first at the 000-default.conf. So to do that, I'm just going to do ls 000-default.conf, and you can see that this has very little in it actually. I have a virtual host which does *:80, and the server name directive sets the request scheme, host name, and port that the server uses to identify itself. So I have a server admin, which is just webmaster at localhost, and a document root /var/www/html, and I have an error log and a custom log, and then I have the rewrite engine on. And this is where it gets interesting. So I have a rewrite engine on, rewrite condition for %server name equals cptr446g.cs.southern.edu. I have a rewrite rule that says forward this to https:///server name /request URI. And this is a permanent thing that we're doing here. And that's the end. So all of this does is rewrite to forward things to a regular location. Now, what is a regular location? That's actually going to be in our 000-default-LE for Let's Encrypt -SSL, and this is by default put in there. When I made the Let's Encrypt, it went straight from the 000-default and created this other one. So let's default-LE and look at that one. This one also is not very long actually. This has a virtual host, and we set our virtual host to be to *:443, and then we have a server name, which is for cptr446g.cs.southern.edu, the server admin, which hasn't changed, our document root, which hasn't changed, our error and custom logs, which hasn't changed, and then we have an SSL certificate file that gives me a full chain PEM certificate. So I give it a chain file, and then I get a key file, which is my private key, and then I include the etc/let's encrypt /options-ssl-apache.conf. So that's something I actually need to look at. So I'm just going to cat this out so that you can see the end there. And let's etc. let's encrypt options SSL Apache conf. So again, this one is also not a really long file. What it does tell us is say that the SSL engine is on, thank you, and that the SSL protocol here is going to be SSL version 2 and version 3. We have a cipher suites that we accept. We have SSL honor cipher order on and SSL compression off. SSL options are a plus strict require, which means that we will require SSL. And we're going to add a vhost name to log entries. So actually, I'm not exactly sure what that does, except that it's got a bunch of log information, so it's a log formatting thing. And that's it. We don't have anything else in here. So there's nothing spectacular that I think is going to cause us problems. So let's look at how to actually do something here with a virtual host. So let's create a configuration. All right, so we've got one here. Not sure exactly where I want to do this because I want it to be able to update the Let's Encrypt stuff correctly. Okay, so going back over here to getting everything ready in HTTP, I had started off by talking about, I need to start off by talking about these virtual host settings. I'm going to show you what mine actually looks like. I've got it working now, so it took me an hour and a half or so to work out all the little bugs, and I'm going to tell you what the got-yous are. So if I go, first of all, I'm going to go to etc. Apache, and I'm going to look at, I use Joe, that's just me, sites-available, and I'm going to look at my default-LE, the SSL configuration, okay? Now, I have this virtual host. I just copied this verbatim here, and I put in the request header set X forward protocol, and my expression is %request scheme, and then in virtual host. This is 0:0, so this is everything. And then I have down here this 443 host that says, hey, my server name is cptr446g.cs.southern.edu. My server admin is not available to people, thank you. Document host is var www.html, and then I have the stuff that I added by for me, and that would include let's see, oh wow, KK, there we go. Never mind that, that's a way to end a highlighting thing in this editor. So I've got the proxy preserve host on, I've got the proxy bypass on, I've got the proxy pass reverse, and it's going to http:// etc. to 5000. And you'll notice that I am now passing this to what would appear to be, from all of our other experiences, the HTTP page, not the HTTPS page. And I actually want to do that. I don't want to double encrypt things. I do not need on the server that I'm talking to, I'm talking to a particular server, CPTR 446G, essentially, and it's going to talk on its own self to 127 localhost. I don't need that encryption happening there. I don't need the conversation between Apache and 127.0.0.1 encrypted. Don't need it. So I am only using HTTP. My server name, oh look, that's terrible. I shouldn't have that in there. And the script alias, or the server alias, doesn't need to be in there. So I've already set the CPTR 446 in there. And those are really the only things that I needed, because I already had the server name up there, and I don't care about the alias. Okay. So, because I have a single thing, and I didn't do the error logs the way they have them. If I were going to do the error logs, I would certainly put in a / in these two locations, at least for Ubuntu. Okay, so I left my error logs there, and I think I like them that way. And then I left the SSL that Let's Encrypt included at the bottom. And then I did a system control restart Apache 2 to make sure that that is working properly. And when I do that, that's all I need here. This is my virtual host. Now remember, this is my Let's Encrypt one. This is what I did here. But that won't get everything working for you the way you need. And so there's a couple of things more that you need to do. They say, oh, all you need to do is servers HTTP config test, and then restart Apache. So you can do a configuration test. That's something I haven't done in here before because I didn't have any problems with my config at this point. But of course it's going to be an unrecognized service, Apache 2. And so all it does is say I don't recognize that. So I'm running on Ubuntu, it doesn't have that. What you do need to do though on Ubuntu that is not available on the other things is you need to actually set up some stuff, and I'm going to show you right here what it is. Wow, that's pretty large. You need to turn on some stuff in Apache. First of all, you need to turn on the headers, the proxy, and the proxy HTTP. So I need to be able to target HTTP, and to do that I have to actually do those things. So let me ignore this stuff really quick so you can actually see it. Wow, I wish it wouldn't do that. Ignore. Okay, so you need to do these three things here. So the little hash is like your prompt. So sudo a2en, that's Apache 2, enable module headers, and enable the module proxy and the proxy HTTP. If you don't do those three things, it's not going to work. Then you need to restart Apache, and then we can go down and talk about creating the service file. So I want to show you what actually happens after I got all of those things done. There is one other issue, and that is I actually have this created in my home directory, and I've actually moved it into a directory called publish. Now publish has, I'm sorry, cd publish. This actually has the published information, the DLLs and everything else. There's no code here. It's just DLLs and a couple of, I have a web config, and that's it. And the way I run this is I need to be in this directory. If you don't get it in this directory, it won't work. So .NET, it won't work properly. It will work some. So I just do the Razor pages, which is what I'm actually using, .dll. And when you hit enter on that, it'll start it. Now I already have mine running, so let me show you. If I look at jobs, you'll see that I have that running actually, and I have that with the ampersand on the end. The reason why I have that running with the ampersand on the end is because that puts it in the background and I can still do something. Now to show you that this is actually working, let me pull this over. This is actually my ASP.NET Core homepage, and it seems to be working just fine. Everything's there and everything loads. But what happens if I don't start this in the right directory? So let me kill my server here, and it'll do application is shutting down, and then it's done. If I do jobs, you can see that there aren't any listed there. And let me cd back to this level. I'm no longer in publish. And if I then go in and say, hey, .NET run this thing, publish, then do Razor DLL and run it, it'll run fine. Okay, everything's working, and you know, I can bring up a new page. Now this is my existing page, but when I reload this, I don't see any of this extra stuff. In fact, everything's gone. All of that stuff is gone, and then this stuff is in the wrong place. And that's because none of the static content is actually being served. And the reason it's not being served is because of how this is actually going to look at the static resources. It's expecting to find the static resources in the current directory with a subdirectory of www root. And if you look here, there is no www root. But if I go into publish and I look here, you'll see www root right there. So if you start it from here, .net, and I'm going to do a /razorpages.dll and start it again. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to do the ampersand. And this is my page, and I reload it, Control R, and all of a sudden it's back to where I would expect it to be with all the static content there and everything. So it was missing CSS pages, it was missing JavaScript stuff, and it was missing this content here, okay, the static content here. So when I combine all those problems together, what I got is a page that sort of was there, but it was only half there. Only the dynamic content was there, none of the static content was there. So there I got it running. The last thing I need to do is doing a service. So I'm going to Control C, and I need to create a service. So I'm going to call this, I don't care, it's going to be Kestrel. That's all I'm going to call it, is Kestrel. So let's go into etc. I'm going to go into system D, and I'm going to system, and you'll see here that there are a bunch of these wants, and there's a few things called like sshd.service. So I'm going to do an LL here for just a second because I want to know where those actually are. And sure enough, these are in lib system D, and here's the iSCSI, here's the SSHD. So it looks like on Ubuntu these are going to be in a slightly different place. So let me go to /lib/system D/system/ that's good enough. And there are all my systems. Now, wow, lots and lots and lots of stuff. So let's make ourselves a service. Okay, so I'm going to nano, and I'm going to do Kestrel.service. And I'm just going to put that in there to start with. And I'm going to put all of this in there because I think it'll work. And we'll try it. Okay, I'm not using, I am using Ubuntu, so let's do this. Description, example.net web API running on, yeah, let's make that Ubuntu. We're probably going to have to change some things. 18.04. My service is going to be a working directory of not var www hello app, but it's going to be /home/scott/publish. And then I'm going to execute start, and we're going to put that in /home/scott/publish/ and I need to make this, oh my goodness, I don't remember what this is. It's Razor Pages movie or something like that. Let me see. Give me a new terminal. I want a new terminal. Thank you. I like terminals. Multiple terminals. Lots and lots of terminals. Razor Pages movie. So this is going to be Razor Pages movie. Now yours will probably be different than mine. You don't have to name yours the same as mine. Okay, so let me, now that I have that, I can get rid of this other thing. So then I have restart always, restart service after 10 seconds after it crashes. Kill signal is the SIGINT. The syslog identifier, .NET example, I don't care. User. This one will be interesting, and I think I want this to be me, but I can leave it. It's www-data, and I can verify that, by the way. I go back to my other one here and look, but it's not Apache as a user anymore in Ubuntu. It hasn't been for a long time, actually. So I can cat etc /passwd and remember. I am too tired to do that. Let's grep for www. Oh, look, it's www-data. Now, one of the things I'm going to actually have to do is I'm going to have to sudo su, and I'm going to have to chown www-data :www-data. And while we're at it, let's do that for everything in that directory. -r to publish. And now when I look at this, I do have publish being owned by www-data. And so I can go back over here and leave it that way, www-data. And in the environment, it's going to be wanted by the multi-user-target. So, right. Control K, Control K. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a problem. I just do copy that back in there. Wanted by multi-user. Oh, Control save. Control X. Now, I want to compare this to the SSHD service just so that we can see them side by side. So I'm actually going to use Joe again to do this. And I'm going to say kestrel.service, and then I want the SSHD.service. Let's get one that we can SSH.service. Okay, so it's just SSH, it's not SSHD. Okay, now what you're going to see here is the one that I have originally, and Joe allows me to open up two documents at the same time, and it just splits the screen so I can see them. So this one does have a description. We probably need to do after network.target or audit.d.service. It really isn't. I do want to start it. Actually, I don't care when it starts. Service, we've got an environment file. We probably don't need that. Let's see whether we can get it working or not. Now, as soon as each time I exit out of that, it exits out of each one in series. And I can say systemctl start kestrel. Okay. Systemctl start kestrel. Okay, so it appears like it's running. We can verify that it's running, actually, by reloading the web page. And you will notice that the service is temporarily unavailable. Okay, so let's see if we can figure out what happened. Okay, just a really quick fix that we need to do here, and that is, this is for CentOS, and we are running Ubuntu, and things are not actually where we would expect to find them. So I needed to find out where .NET was, because as I looked at my page, it says exec start and user local bin .NET. And that's probably not where it is, so I just did a which.net, and that tells me where it actually is. So it's actually in user bin.net. So let me look at this for a minute and go in here and change that to user bin, userben.net, and let's see if that doesn't actually do a better job. Configure file or drop-ins of cache service are changed on disk. And reload to reload units. Okay, so system ctl daemon dash reload to reload units, and then I can say system dash status kestrel system ctl. I wish they had done something besides system ctl. So looks like it's running. So I said system control status and it gave me everything there. That's good. So let's reload here. And when I reloaded, voila, it's running. So I now have a way of doing this process and actually putting things out there. In the service, I can restart it and I can run it and I can do everything just like I would expect. Now, I believe that's it. Let's see. If the user Apache isn't used by the configuration, the user must be created first and given proper ownership of the files. Use timeout stop sec to configure the duration of a time to wait for the app to shut down after it receives the initial interrupt signal. If the app doesn't shut down in this period, sigkill is issued to terminate the app. Provide the value as unitless seconds, for example, 130. The time span, for example, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, of course, would be 60, 120, 150. Okay. 150. Okay, or infinity to disable the timeout. The timeout stop sec defaults to the value of default timeout sec in the manager configuration in systemd-system.conf. The default timeout for most is 90 seconds, which should be fine. Some values, for example, the SQL connection string must be escaped for the configuration providers to read the environment variables. Use the following command to generate a properly escaped value for use in the configuration files. System escape, value to escape. Start the service and verify that it's running. Viewing the logs. Okay, I think we're doing okay. None of this stuff is really important. ASP.NET Core Protection Stack is used by ASP.NET Core middlewares, including authentication middleware, for example, cookie middleware and cross-site. Request forgery protections. Even if data protection APIs aren't called by the user, data protection should be configured to create a persistent cryptographic key store. If data protection isn't configured, the keys are held in memory and discarded when the app restarts. If the key remains is stored in memory when the app starts, all cookie-based authentication tokens are invalidated. Users are required to sign in again on their next request. And any data protected with the keyring can no longer be decrypted. This may include CSRF tokens and ASP.NET Core MVC temp data cookies. Then we need to do key providers, etc. Firewall D is a dynamic daemon to manage the firewall support for network zones, ports, etc. We will talk about firewalls in another place, but we have firewalls already set up via the console, Google console app, web application, so we're okay there. Also, the SSL configuration, we've already done it. So we should be good. And these are some of the things that I talked about earlier, some additional things, and we won't worry about those right now. But I think that's it. I think we're done. We've got a working application, and we've got a way to actually deploy it. And I'm going to actually go through the steps right now so that you can see how I actually deployed it. So I'm going to do this is my deploy steps. Okay, so the first thing that I did is create the application, publish it to a directory, use SCP or SFTP, that should be SCP lowercase, SFTP. I'm using Bitwise to do this, and to copy the published directory to my Linux instance. So make sure it's the correct directory, okay, and make sure that the ownership is www-data for Ubuntu or Apache for CentOS, and after that, all I need to do is restart Kestrel. Now remember, or whatever you named the service, and test the website. Okay, so that's all I have to do. Those are some of the steps that I do for deploying my application, and this is a relatively long video. I will be explaining this in class tomorrow, but I wanted to make sure that you guys had something you could actually see and use after the fact. We'll see you next time in class.